Hello, welcome back to my channel. In this video, I'm going to be giving you 6 small town romance recommendations. Honestly, it is kind of mind-blowing to me that I have never made a small town romance recommendations video, given how much I've really been enjoying this trope or genre, whatever you'd like to call it. It's also something that I think has been becoming a lot more popular in recent years, and it's no surprise to me. I feel like these sorts of romances tend to be really comforting and have side characters that you really get attached to in addition to the couple that you are rooting for. I kept that in mind as I was putting this list together. There's so many small town romances. I could honestly do a part 2 of this video, but I picked, in my opinion, the best of the best, and hopefully books that you might not have heard of. Some of these I'm sure you have, but I did try to include a couple that I think maybe you haven't read yet. So the first book on my list is Like You Love Me by Adriana Locke. This is the first book that I put on my list because I didn't expect to love this romance as much as I did, and I also didn't expect it to be one that had a lot of lasting power, given that it's not like the most mind-blowing or revolutionary plotline out there. This book is about our two main characters, Holden and Sophie. They were best friends growing up, but they kind of went their separate ways and haven't talked to each other in a few years. Sophie is hard at work renovating her family-owned and operated B&B, getting it back into a condition that will entice guests to come and stay. It kind of fell into disrepair under her grandmother's care. She's giving it her all, trying to make this a really nice B&B that people want to stay in, but that obviously requires quite a bit of cash, and her money woes are solved when her, childhood best friend Holden, who's come back to town to work for his grandfather's a vet, so is Holden, and he is kind of waiting around to hear if he is going to get his dream job. And as he's kind of in the process of working at this vet clinic, he finds out that this dream job that he has, that he really wants, really requires commitment, shall we say. The person that's interviewing him, the person he'd be working alongside, really wants to work with someone who has similar values to him. That kind of means that Holden needs to be married. So off cuff, he kind of mentions that, oh, that should be no problem. I'm a committed person. I have a fiance, even though he's very much single. So Holden feels like he needs to remedy this. So he looks really good in front of this person that he's really trying to impress so he can get this job. And Sophie obviously needs money. So Holden says, hey, if you are engaged to me for a little while, if you pretend to be engaged to me for a little while, we'll give you the money that you need to help fix up your B&B. And in exchange, obviously, you will try to impress this person that I'm trying to impress so I can get a job. And we'll go our separate ways eventually. Clearly, they don't go their separate ways and they end up falling for each other. And I just really liked this book. It had everything that I want from a small town romance. You've got side characters that are charming and not meddling. I really liked Sophie's siblings, and I really, really hope and pray the series continues so we get their books. I feel like they were definitely set up to have their own romances. And I think something that makes this one stand out from a lot of other childhood friends tell of her stories is that this one really focuses on establishing the relationship in the present day. We're told that these two were friends when they were younger, and I'm not saying we don't get, moments of their past, but it really is about the relationship in the present. And we get to see Holden really try to not impress Sophie, but try to really live up to being her fiance, even though he is just kind of pretending. I really liked their relationship. I liked how surprisingly steamy this book was. And in general, I just think that Adriana Locke is one of those KU authors that is really, really underrated. I'm not saying she's an author that no one's heard of, but I do think that her books need to come up more often in conversation because she writes some really awesome contemporary romances, and Like You Love Me is no exception. All right, next up on the list is an Elsie Silver book. I don't think any small town romance list would be complete without an Elsie Silver book, but I think a lot of people would put her Chestnut Spring series on a list like this, something like Heartless or Reckless, and I get that, but I also think that her other series, her Gold Rush Ranch series, is equally as fantastic and is often overlooked for some of her newer titles. So I decided, instead of putting one of my all-time favorite books by her, Heartless, on this list, I would put my equally as favorite from the Gold Rush Ranch series on this list. Anyway, A Photo Finish by Elsie Silver is an absolutely fantastic romance that I don't think gets as much credit as it should. This book is about Violet, who is the sister of the boys in the Chestnut Spring series, Rhett, all those guys. She is their sister, and she is at Gold Rush Ranch because she wants to be a jockey, and she wants to ride horses, and she does that with a lot of success. However, she ends up injured and having to live with a guy who she really cannot stand, named Cole. Cole is her boss's brother, and he is the ultimate damaged hero, the ultimate grump. At the beginning of the story, you don't really know that he's a damaged hero. You just know that he is kind of an asshole to our heroine. But as the story continues, you get to see his backstory kind of unfold as Violet is trying to recover and trying to kind of go after the things that she desires. I feel like I'm not truly selling this one. There's so much more to the plotline than I am telling you, but I do want you to go into this book not knowing every little thing because I think it makes for an even more enjoyable reading experience. But this is kind of the exception to the I don't don't like grumpy heroes rule. Cole, again with his damaged past, is just a guy that I totally fell hook, line, and sinker for. And Violet is someone who I really sympathized with as well. She's different, I would say, than some of Elsie Silver's other heroines. She's definitely confident and exudes strength, but in a way that's very different than some of the brash heroines she writes, kind of like the heroine in Heartless. But I really enjoyed the story. I really love seeing these two come together. I think this might be one of Elsie's swooniest romances because the hero just goes out of his way, goes above and beyond for the heroine, and of course the book's incredibly sexy as well. I couldn't leave that out. A lot of the books on this list are incredibly sexy, which I think is nice because yes, you want that sugary sweetness of a small town romance, you want something that feels lighthearted, but you also want the steam. At least I know a lot of you do. So I definitely think you will not be missing that in this book. Basically, long story short, if you like a self-loathing hero like I do, pick up this book. Switching gears, let's talk about a book that is, I would say, even more lighthearted, and it is Tempt by Melanie Harlow. This is the 9th book in the Cloverleaf Farm series. It's actually the book that finishes off the series as a whole, though I will say you can definitely read these books out of order. You can definitely just read this book if this is the one that interests you. All of the books in the series are small town romances, but this one really stood out to me because I feel like there was a lot more emphasis on the small town in the story given what the characters are going through. So this book follows our main character, Millie. She is the daughter of one of the characters in the very beginning of the series. It's like you've got one series and then you've got kind of like a spin-off with the kids of those people. Anyway, Millie is a beautiful plus-size woman, and beginning of the story she is working at her parents' wedding venue slash, like, is it a vineyard? I'm not entirely sure. They have this big farm. She works there, she plans weddings, and she really likes her job, but she feels like she is called to do something more, and that something more is to open up a boutique for plus-size brides, which is super cool and something that is definitely a focus of the story. Now when Millie is traveling, I think she goes to New York, she ends up meeting this really hot guy at a bar who ends up kind of like saving her from a creep. He is a little bit older than her. I think she's in her 30s and he's in his 40s, and they have this like one really delightful night of passion where Millie feels really seen and really cherished, and she doesn't think she's gonna see this guy again, but it definitely gives her this boost I think that she needed when she comes back to town. Unfortunately though, this is not just going to be a one-night thing, and it's definitely not going to be a thing where she never sees this guy again, because our hero Zach comes back into her life by coming back to the small town. He actually has a connection to the town that Millie is from, and things get really, I don't want to say twisted and confusing from there, but things get very juicy and feel very like small town drama, which I really enjoyed. I don't really want to spoil exactly what happens, but the relationship between Millie and Zach is kind of forbidden in a lot of ways, and it just makes it all the more juicy when they do end up hooking up and having to, like, I don't know, fight their feelings for each other. There's just so much about the story that I personally really connected with and enjoyed. I think the biggest thing for me was that Millie, again, similar to Violet in the last book, is a really career-focused person, and she grows not only in her interpersonal relationship, but in her relationship with herself. And as someone who reads a lot of romance, I think that is what makes certain romances stand out for me, is when we have heroines who go on a journey, or characters who go on more of a journey beyond just like falling in love. And I think that's important because in real life, my life is not just about the person that I'm with, and it's not just about that romantic relationship, right? Like there's so many other things that are happening in the context of even a relationship forming. So it's really cool to see Millie kind of going after what she wants and being really successful at it. And it's also cool seeing Zach kind of like find his footing as well later in life and kind of trying to figure out what he wants to do going forward, because he knows that his current job is not necessarily a forever thing for him either. In addition to that, and the reason again that I picked this one over some of the other books in the series is because I think this one really focuses on the small town aspect. Again, you've got Millie opening this business. She goes to a lot of the businesses in the small town, whether it's to get coffee or to like meet up with someone. And you also have all of these like small town side characters that really make the story what it is. And I just really like this series. There's such an emphasis on family and on friendship, and I just really like these books. I think you'd be happy reading any of the books in the series, but I really like this one. This is definitely a standout for me in the series. If you're looking for something different tonally that's not necessarily very upbeat, but that definitely has a good grumpy hero, might I recommend Juniper Hill by Daphne Perry. This is a book that I read last year for a video where I was reading KU small town romances to try to like see if I could find any that had Gilmore Girls vibes. And while this one didn't have that like upbeat cheeriness of Gilmore Girls, it definitely had a similar plotline in the sense that our main character Memphis is coming to a small town that she's never been to before to make a new life for herself and her child. And of course, she's going to be working at an inn as well. So this story starts out kind of bleak. You've got our heroine who really just doesn't know her path in life. She doesn't have that like upbeat spirit that Lorelai has, but she's definitely come to the right place to kind of restart her life. Quincy, Montana is where she ends up settling, and she works at an inn where the manager of the inn really helps, I don't want to say take care of our heroine, but like really forms a bond and a friendship with her, and they've kind of got this camaraderie. And then you also have the hero, the grumpy hero who comes in, and he's definitely one of the grumpier heroes on this list. I think that makes sense, again, given the tone of this story. I wouldn't say it's like bleak and hopeless, but it's definitely not like upbeat and fun. I think that's kind of the vibe for Daphne Perry books. She kind of has some like twisty endings too. This book is definitely not without its twisty ending. So if you're someone who gets a little bored by contemporaries, you might like this. But anyway, Knox, our hero, he is the chef of the restaurant connected to the inn. He is the brother of Eloise, the manager of the inn, and he lives next door to Memphis. He is upset by her crying baby. He doesn't really like her very much. She is a distraction he doesn't need. But of course, he can't just like leave a poor woman with her screaming baby. He goes over and like helps her at night care for this child. He also like feeds her whenever she is working at the inn. And they strike up this like tentative friendship and or romantic relationship. It feels really tender despite the backdrop that feels a little bit bleak. Again, I think this recommendation is a pretty good one if you're someone who gets a little bit like, I don't know, eye-rolly about Hallmark style small town romances. I personally like the whole gamut of small town romances, but I think this one, again, kind of like serves a purpose that is much different than the other books on this list. And again, I think if you're like looking for a grumpy hero who can make you a grilled cheese and also take care of your screaming baby, I think you're really gonna enjoy this one. All right, another book that has Gilmore Girls vibes, as in the kind of small town charm and amazing side characters. It doesn't have the whole single mom coming to a small town thing. This book's about our two main characters, Becca and Evie, and at the beginning of the story, this book opens up in a way that I typically don't like. Now that I'm thinking about it, Tempt kind of starts in the same way, but you have sort of a hookup between these two characters. They meet, I don't remember where, they meet somewhere. They're both like on a trip. Separately, they meet each other kind of at a bar, they end up hooking up, and they don't think they're ever going to see each other again until Evie ends up coming to Beckett's small town, and he has to face his lingering feelings for this woman. I love the story. Again, how many times do I have to say it? Because we have a heroine who is trying to figure out her life. Evie is a social media influencer who really likes to shine her light on small businesses. She kind of like travels around the states to show off small businesses and kind of like get people interested in these different travel destinations, but she's feeling like this isn't really her calling. She wants something deeper from life, and so she's in this small town to kind of like figure herself out and kind of figure out her next step. And Beckett is sort of torn because he knows that Evie needs to leave and, you know, go do her sort of travel job, but he is falling kind of hook, line, and sinker for her. And I feel like, again, I'm not selling this one very well. It's not that the plotline in this particular book is very twisty or is something that's hard to explain, but I think the beauty of the story is the simplicity. I really liked seeing these two interact. There's something about the way that B.K. Borison writes especially that connects with me as a reader. And it's interesting, as I was pulling notes together for this video, I was looking at, you know, the Goodreads reviews and kind of seeing what other people's sentiments were, and it surprised me how many people were saying that they didn't enjoy the writing of this book or B.K. Borison's writing in general, and I just couldn't relate less. I love her writing. I love the way that she writes sex scenes. I love the way that she infuses passion into all of her writing. It's quite remarkable, and I think it's something that I really like. I like when authors do a good job at kind of towing the line between getting you to sort of like feel physical sensations for the characters without making it creepy. I think sometimes, you know, you have a hero who is very into the heroine physically, and it feels kind of gross being in his head. But in B.K. Borison's books, you get those sort of like longing glances that sort of like heat up your whole body, those sorts of moments that really like make you believe in the chemistry of the characters. And then when they finally do get together, the sex scenes are great because she doesn't use gross words to describe various parts. Like, they're explicit sex scenes, but you're not getting like, I don't know, he got his loins out of his pants or something. I don't know. I just love her books. Her heroes are swoon-worthy. She writes these like over-the-top happy endings that I love. I just love her books. I think she's a fantastic writer. She has 3 incredible books out already, and I'm so excited to read more from her. If you have not read these books, I feel like you need to. I think the Love Light Farms series is just incredible. It's stand out, and I'm really excited for the 4th one. Anyway, total 5-star winner for me. I don't want to say this is the only book you should read from this list, but if you have like one book that I think is underrated, maybe this one, pick it up. And then lastly, we have a recent read for me, which is When in Rome by Sarah Adams. I kind of went back and forth on whether I wanted to put this one or Practice Makes Perfect on the list, which is the second book in the series, because both were equally fun for me. Sarah Adams wrote The Cheat Sheet, which is a book that I think got a lot of hype and buzz over the past couple of years with the kind of advent of book talk. And it's a book that I feel like has been pretty polarizing because it is a closed-door romance. It feels kind of over the top with its writing style, and some people consider it immature. And I'm not saying I disagree with those things, but there's just something so charming about the way that Sarah Adams writes, and I think that this series, you should give a try, even if you didn't like the cheat sheet. So this book's about our main character, Amelia, who is a pop star, kind of seeking escape from her everyday life. She ends up watching Roman Holiday with Audrey Hepburn, and she has this idea that she is going to travel to Rome. Not Rome, Italy, but the closest Rome that she can find. And when she types into Google Rome, she ends up coming across Rome, Kentucky. So she hops in her Corolla and she decides she is going to escape her life for a little bit and take a break before she goes on tour. Once she gets there, she ends up breaking down, unfortunately, in front of a guy's house who comes to her rescue. His name is Noah. She was hoping to find a room at the inn in Rome, Kentucky, but of course the inn is completely booked and she has to stay with Noah while her car is getting fixed over the next couple of weeks and while she's trying to figure out her life. And it was just really delightful and really charming. I think Noah is one of those characters who you can't help but love. This is a grumpy sunshine romance for sure. I would say Amelia at the beginning doesn't feel super sunshiny, but as the story continues, you really kind of get that vibe from her. And Noah is definitely grumpy, but it's not without reason, and it's not that he doesn't have a really soft side. He's grumpy, but still polite and respectful, which is something I really like. He's not a dick. I loved a particular scene too in the middle of this book. I don't want to spoil it, but it is such a charming declaration of, I don't want to say love, but of passion, of like interest. It was really, really awesome. And this book I particularly liked as well because we have the hero and he has a couple of sisters who come into the story and kind of befriend Amelia and make her feel really comfortable in this small town setting. You also have like other townspeople who provide like insight and wisdom throughout the story, which I think really helps Amelia as she's trying to kind of like figure out her way, and Noah as he's trying to like navigate love after heartbreak. One of the reasons he's grumpy for sure. The story is just so nice. I think both of the books in the series are really, really fun. Practice Makes Perfect, the second book, follows the littlest sister of Noah. That one is also super, super fun. So I think you couldn't go wrong with either of these books. And even though I believe they're both closed door, you don't feel upset by it. You don't feel like there is anything lacking, and I like that. I don't know. I feel like I'm changing in my old age. I used to never want to read a romance if it didn't have smutty scenes, but as I get older, I'm like, you know what? If it's a well-written story, I think it's okay. I think it is totally okay. And if you can write a really passionate first kiss, perfect. So that's it. Those are the 6 small town romances I have to recommend to you today. Let me know if you want to see a part 2 to this. I don't know that I have like 6 full-fledged recommendations ready to go, but it gives me more motivation to read more small town romances to recommend to you. So thanks so much for watching this video. I hope you found a new book to read. Let me know in the comments down below if y'all have any small town romances that you think that I need to read, especially if they're available on KU. But I love y'all so much. Thanks so much for watching, and until next time.